We want to get back out to our breaking news. This is developing on Detroit's west side. Victor Williams is following this protest that we've been talking to you about. Victor, what are you seeing now?
Just more and more people, guys, and they're continuing to make their way down Livernois. No end in sight. Once again, we have no idea where they may be going. We have no idea where the police are at this time, but this is the situation. We have so many people who are starting to join. It's almost like a snowball effect. The longer they walk, the longer the crowd gets, because people are just simply joining in. But once again, folks, this is nothing like we saw before, with tear gas having to be deployed from police, the protesters sending that tear gas back, the police having to retreat. It's very odd to be here and to not have any type of police presence whatsoever, but that's what we're seeing. In a way, they have taken over the streets for the most part. You see a lot of people out of their cars with their fists up in the air. Lots of people here even dancing in the street, seeing this as a victory that they were able to get the police to retreat. And now they're walking just still in the middle of the street with no type of presence from police, no one even directing this. So we're going to have to see what happens with this. We're not sure how this is going to end, but we have a feeling that as these people are continuing to walk, that police might be somewhere on the other end. And we're going to have to see what happens once that happens and the two people, or the two meet. So we'll just have to see. Back to you guys.
Victor, if people are just joining us, we want to definitely keep them updated. The protest is in reference to the death of 19-year-old Hakeem Littleton, and this is what we know so far, and this is according to Detroit Police Chief James Craig. Officers were looking for a person today that was involved in a 4th of July shooting that left 5 people hurt and 3 others dead. Officers say when they found their suspect, they were approached by another man, and somehow a fight happened and an officer put that man in some kind of chokehold, and that is when officers say that man, Hakeem Littleton, that they were restraining, opened fire. Detroit police officers then took out their guns, and then Hakeem Littleton was shot, brought to a local hospital where he was declared dead. That is the scene, that's the information that we're getting from Detroit police. Witnesses, as you have mentioned, Jason, are explaining a much different scene and saying Littleton did not have a weapon. So that is the main question here, is what happened when Littleton approached those police officers? Why did they open fire on him? And these protesters are angry. They want answers, and they've been calling for police officers' badges. They've been demanding more information from the police department. If you had seen the scene about an hour ago, it was much different. Detroit police were actively involved in trying to contain the crowd, contain the situation. That was not going to happen. The tear gas was not working. The crowd just threw it back at them. They were trying to make that crowd, in a sense, smaller. They were dispersing. So Detroit police made a decision to remove themselves from the situation. The protesters have now grown, taken over the street, and now are progressing block by block, minute by minute, spreading their message, asking for answers. And Jason, you've seen this firsthand. This can be going, look at that. You see a mother and her baby and her daughter walking hand in hand, walking down the street. A perfect symbol of a family that is demanding some answers from the police department, not assessing any blame at this particular point, but they're wanting answers.
And oftentimes we will see with these protests, Karen, as they march, people in neighborhoods who are out and about will join. They call for them to join and march with them, and a lot of times they do. I've seen many families, many mothers with their young children, fathers with their children out there walking. But there was another shot in there I wanted to point out. When we were on the ground there, you could see a vehicle that was marked medic in the back. And it's important to note that those are organized protesters who were out there. The medic vehicle is there for reasons like that. If there are clashes with police, they go and they help. They try and clear out their eyes if tear gas is deployed. But that's a sign that these are organized protesters. And when this began, it's important to note these were people in the neighborhood who were more just who lived nearby, were reacting to this shooting, some family members, and then it immediately grew. Word got out that that there had been an incident, and protesters from other areas came and joined this. And now what you're seeing is largely the organized protesters that we've seen. And there are different factions. There are different factions of these protest groups who often form this. And Victor Williams is on the ground with what's going on. We want to check in with him again. Victor.
Yeah, guys, we're over on 7 Mile right now, and this is where people have started to kind of calm down a little bit more. They're stopping in the middle of the street. This is the intersection of 7 Mile and Livernois. But we're here now. There was a helicopter that was here earlier. It seems to be hovering above the people. They keep on throwing up their fingers, of course, to the helicopter. So right now they are stopping. So we're going to have to see where this is going to end. You hear the person up there telling the people, do not run, do not leave, stay shoulder to shoulder, brother and sister. So this is going to be something that is going to be lasting a whole lot longer, folks. So we're going to have to see how this does play out. But everyone is here now, and we have a feeling that this might not be the final place. It looks like they are starting to move again, so we are continuing on 7 Mile. So we are now making our way with the group. Like I said before, we have no idea where they're going. There are no police out here, but all of this has been in response to the death of Hakeem Littleton. So we are going to stay with this group as they make their way on down the street. Lots of cars just stopping. None of them really having any type of issue with this other than just blowing their horns, but a lot of them are blowing their horns in support of what this group is doing right now.
And Victor, taking a look from Sky 4, if you can see that it appears that the crowd is heading east on 7 Mile. If that's the case, they're headed towards Woodward, and that would be right in the area of the 12th precinct in Palmer Park. Many times these protesters, like you said, Jason, who are organized, obviously have a plan of where they're going to go, not necessarily just go up and down streets. They are not too far from the 12th precinct, so that could be perhaps their destination, which would be near 7 and Woodward. That's on the northwest corner of that intersection where that police precinct is. That could be a possibility. The crowd is taking over half of 7 Mile. Some of the traffic is snarling through. There's the chanting, as we can hear, through all of the different microphones, asking for justice, no peace, looking for answers into the death of 19-year-old Hakeem Littleton, who was shot by a Detroit police officer earlier today as they were investigating a murder that had happened over the holiday weekend. But things do seem fairly calm here, Jason. You have been in the protests as well, and what's your perspective?
Well, going back to would they be going to the 12th precinct? Very possible, but to be honest, a lot of times these marches just get going and suddenly they've walked 4 or 5 miles and they're not quite sure where they're going, and it just kind of is a fly by the seat of your pants type of march. And since this kind of began out of an incident that happened, it'll be interesting to see where it does go, if they are headed somewhere specific or if they just march until something happens with police. And Karen, I know if that's a police helicopter that was flying low there, certainly a tactic we've seen with these protests and other times where police use that chopper to fly low to disrupt what's going on. And we saw that the very first night of protests, it was in Corktown, where the chopper flew awfully low and it was trying to disperse the crowd. And not long after that, it led to several arrests and a clash with police, and then that spilled further on blocks down where there was another clash with police. And I'm sure Detroit police are trying to learn from what's happened over the last couple months to handle what's happened here. And as it began, nothing really seemed, at least judging from our reporters on the ground and what we've seen video-wise, not until things were thrown at police did they move in and try and make arrests. And we've seen them tackle some protesters with this, and then even longer before they finally deployed tear gas. And then that's when this march began. And we're going to have to wait and see if police are prepared to let this march fizzle, or if they deploy the tactic we saw, I think it was on night 4 of these protests, where they sent out one unit to block the march and then brought in another unit from the rear to kind of box them in and then make about 130 arrests, as it was that night. And that was on the east side of Detroit. But certainly Detroit police have dealt with this over the last couple of months. It's been mostly peaceful, but obviously tonight things have gotten out of control. The violence has erupted. And from what Chief James Craig has said in the past, that's kind of the line. When things get violent, when his officers are in danger in his mind, that's when police are not going to sit back and are not going to let them just march. They will take action, Karen.
We'd like to send it back to Victor, who is in the middle of this crowd. In the very beginning, we kept saying the crowd was growing and growing and growing. It appears that it has grown, but it hasn't necessarily gotten much larger, I'd say, in the past 15, 20 minutes. At least it appears that way from the Sky 4 shot we're seeing. I don't know if you're getting a different perspective or not on the ground, Victor.
Yeah, it looks like some of these people are starting to actually get tired. They've been walking a pretty long time, but it does look like they're starting to disperse at least just a little bit. But as you guys can hear, someone on the intercom is saying to just keep moving. They want everyone to keep on going, but some of them are now stopping right over here. Now remember, we are still on 7 Mile, and a lot of them, they want to keep on going. But some are stopping at this point, so we're trying to see what's being said right now. We're trying to see what exactly they're talking about. And as of right now, it has come to a standstill. But the size is not growing as fast as it was before, like you're saying. It does seem that some of these people are tired, and we do have this helicopter from the police. They are flying low right now. And everyone is putting their fist in the air. Hearing people inviting more people out and saying that they're going to be in position, they're going to be ready. So we have no idea where this is going right now. But everyone is getting right back into the street. Some of them are walking.
I know, but as that chopper flies low to interrupt protesters, is that what you're seeing right now, that that's a police helicopter that's flying low?
Right. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing that police helicopter flying low. And that's one of the tactics that we have seen in the past, but it's not stopping these people from walking. They're continuing to walk. Traffic has come to a standstill. Many people even getting out of their cars to take pictures. We want to also apologize for some of the profanity that you guys might be hearing right now. But everyone is in the middle of the street, passionate.
And again, important to note that a lot of the protesters, we see a lot of the protesters on the ground there have backpacks. We've seen several with the goggles on. That means they came prepared in case there was a clash with police. And in fairness to those protesters, a lot of times they bring that. Some of them will bring that every time, and most of the time there is no clash. Or maybe they don't intend it, but they're prepared for it. It just seems, after what we've seen today, several with the backpacks with supplies, the goggles, a fan to blow tear gas back toward the officers. It certainly seems protesters were coordinated when they got to that scene where the original protest kind of organically began after this officer-involved shooting on Detroit's west side.
Now, I can tell you, Jason, we are hoping to get Police Chief James Craig on the phone. We're trying to effort some type of a phone interview so we can then talk to him a little bit about what he can share with us about this case and the shooting of 19-year-old Hakeem Littleton. So we are obviously hoping that will happen before the end of this newscast. I know it's 6:19 now, but getting him to speak to us obviously would be very beneficial for everyone, just to kind of get the latest information in terms of what went down around 12:30 this afternoon when police showed up on the west side trying to find that suspect in a murder of another individual on the 4th of July. There you go. There is the police chopper we can see flying, and as you mentioned, Jason, many times that is a tactic, obviously, to kind of disrupt the message because it is so loud. It's really hard to hear exactly what they're saying and chanting. We were trying to listen in with Victor's microphone. It just gets a little bit muffled. The crowd has been marching now for, gosh, nearly 2 hours, and we're talking about extreme heat here, 92 degrees, walking along McNichols, now on 7 Mile, headed towards Woodward. Right now we do see, I was just trying to see if there was any police cars there trying to block the road, but those just looks like individual cars that are probably trying to get out of the area. A little hard to tell from Sky 4. But that is the very latest situation on the ground level. That is the shot from Victor's camera as he is walking with this group. And the group is filled with a variety of people, young and old. There are some children, all different races. And this is a thing that is unifying many Detroiters. And this has been doing this for the past few weeks, as you've mentioned, Jason. You've covered these protests. the message is out. There is a concern in a particular case, and people want answers. Have you talked one-on-one, Victor, with any of these individuals who have been protesting in terms of why they decided to show up or what they had heard?
Exactly, and that's exactly.
Right now, no. A lot of them have been quite angry, and a lot of them also have been withdrawn. So since this has started, we haven't really been able to talk to people one-on-one. We don't know if that will even be suitable for live TV. But as soon as we're able to, what we're going to do is we're going to pull a few of them aside, and we're going to try to see exactly what's on their mind throughout all of this. But I can tell you right now, a lot of this is just echoing what we have heard for week after week at every single protest that we've been at. They're saying the same exact things. They want to defund the police. They want them to stop killing African Americans that might not be armed, and lots of different elements like that. So we'll try to get what we can from them as soon as we're able.
All right, Victor is on the ground for us there as these protesters, and you can see that's a good example of as they march, you'll see people come out, take a picture, show support, and a lot of these protesters will invite them to march with them. And this, you can see the backpacks. This was a planned protest. There's a protest every day in Detroit, and sometimes you don't know about it or see it, but they've done this now for every night since that very first Friday. And it's going on 40 plus days, straight days of protests in Detroit, where they usually march or there's some sort of rally at some point. It's usually at Detroit police headquarters. Tonight things were different as this officer-involved shooting happened. A crowd grew organically in protest of that, and there was some shouting with officers, and the crowd grew, and we saw that it was mostly protesters from different groups of protesters, definitely Black Lives Matter protesters. We've seen signs for that, and the same group that's fighting for racial justice and against police brutality that have been marching and protesting for that message. But we have seen from the very first day, the early days, and the police chief has talked about this, there are some who are there just to cause trouble that get embedded with this, who are looking for a fight with police. Not to say that happened today, however, we did see them respond to tear gas that was ultimately fired on the crowd from a good-sized distance, and as soon as protesters picked those up and threw those canisters back and started blowing the tear gas back toward police, we saw police kind of move back, regroup, and basically no more arrests. But there have been some arrests that we have seen before this march began, when it was still at one corner and things were being thrown at police. Grant Herms was on that original scene and talked about batteries being thrown and bottles and coolers thrown at police, and they responded. Now we're waiting to see, and we're, again, as Karen mentioned, efforting a phone call with Chief James Craig to see what the new plan is. He certainly won't tell us exactly what police are doing leading up to this, but we haven't heard his response to the family member who talked about how that man died, saying he was unarmed and was on his knees. Police obviously said he had a gun in his hand, was firing at police, which is when police returned fire. Karen.
It's a much different scene, Jason, as it was at the beginning of our 5 o'clock newscast. Police making a real tactical decision to basically remove themselves from the situation. I mean, they showed up and they were in riot gear, and sometimes just the physical presence of them lined up along the street as they were trying to block the protesters from marching really sometimes can incite even more frustration, anger, and violence. So I would say that probably lasted a good 20 to 30 minutes, and after that they made the decision to remove themselves, and that was when they were on 6 Mile. They have since now gone to 7 Mile, and like I said, we don't know where they're headed. Perhaps the 12th precinct at Woodward and 7, or perhaps they're just marching right now. We don't know that plan, but we can say police have removed themselves from the situation. The Detroit police chopper is flying up above. We are in touch with the chief's office, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to speak to him during this physical newscast, but I can tell you we are putting every effort in to try to get the latest information in terms of what happened in the shooting of 19-year-old Hakeem Littleton.